You're listening to Greater Good Radio Hawaii. Please visit us online at greatergoodradio.com. Today's guest is Barry Weinman, co-founder of Allegis Capital, Highbeam, and Dragon Bridge Capital. Since 1980, Barry and his partners have helped take over 70 private companies public. Barry, you mentioned that your company was growing really quickly, and eventually there was a merger. But you had mentioned that you had shared the equity of the company with all of your employees. I think you said 7, or was it 9?
Well, every employee in the company, and at our biggest point, when we went into the merger, we had 50 employees. So every employee had some shares. The original 9 all did very well. How did you
come up with that thought process that every person that you brought in was going to share in that equity instead of holding it, knowing that, this is going to be successful?
Well, that's a decision that every entrepreneur has to face. Our view on it is that if people are owners, they treat the business as if they own the business. I like the story about, do you you ever go and rent a car? Most people have rented cars when they travel. Have they ever taken their car out, that car that they've rented out, and wash it? No. Why? They don't own that car. They don't care about it. But most people will wash their own car if it gets dirty. So the concept of stock options and sharing equity is something that built Silicon Valley, and we were part of that. And so we felt that that was the right way to build a company, and I still feel that way.
So what are those 9 people doing now?
A couple of them went to the Stanford Business School, got their MBAs. A couple of them started a similar company. 2 of them went to Australia and started the same company. They've got a big company over there now. People kind of went their own ways. This was the late 70s, and we haven't kept up with everybody, but I think it gave a lot of people a start. And what usually happens in a successful entrepreneurial environment is that they go out and start other companies. You kind of use one company to grow many. In San Diego, in the middle 80s, there was only one biotech company. From that came 40 companies, and now today there are 400 life science and biotech companies, all who can basically trace their roots back to that original Hybridtech company. So that's what happens when you have a successful entrepreneurial venture.
So you actually were in Silicon Valley almost from the beginning of what we would consider the series of booms.
I started working in Silicon Valley in 1969 at Fairchild Semiconductor, which was the first semiconductor company. And I can remember when the CEO of the company brought all of the employees into the auditorium and announced that that was the day that we shipped more semiconductor chips than walnuts, because up until 1969, the biggest product in Silicon Valley was walnuts. Now, you can't buy walnuts in Silicon Valley anymore, but that was the start. That's really only 36, 37 years ago. So you can build a community, a high-tech community like Silicon Valley in a relatively short period of time, because by 1985, Silicon Valley was really humming.
So what are the key components that made Silicon Valley so successful?
Well, I think there were 3. One is Stanford University. So the professor in the engineering school, Dr. Terman, was the kind of person that encouraged his students to go out and start companies. 2 of his students were David Packard and Hewlett and Packard. That gave the Valley a feeling of, I can do it too, because they weren't any better than anybody else. So you can look around and you can say, if they can make it, I can make it. The second thing was, in addition to the encouragement of entrepreneurship, there was a kind of a California attitude of risk. It's okay to take risk. Sometimes you learn more from your failures, so take a risk and see what you can learn. And the third was, there was the beginning of availability of capital. So investors were looking for the next new thing, and Silicon Valley was where some of those things happened. So the 3 things you need are an encouragement from a local university that has a strong engineering school and strong research. The University of Hawaii at Manoa is very, very strong. So that's a good kind of symbolic example for Hawaii. The second thing is you need people who are willing to take risk and are not afraid of failure. Hawaii needs a little help in that area sometimes. And then the third thing is the availability of capital, some people who are willing to take risk and understand that they're going to lose some of the time.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for more on Greater Good Radio.